Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're taking a really fascinating dossier approach to a complex psychological and social phenomenon. We're going to look at exactly how feelings of victimization and exploitation scale up. We'll be examining how these intense narratives take shape, starting from the incredibly intimate confines of a private chat, all the way up to sweeping, globally broadcast geopolitical conspiracies. Now, just a quick caveat before we jump in, our role today is strictly as impartial reporters. We're just mapping out these distinct, highly charged, and completely unverified claims to understand the architecture of how these narratives are actually built.
So here's a quick look at our agenda for today. We'll start with two distinct narratives, then look at some personal chat logs, move on to a geopolitical transcript, dive into some corporate land allegations, and wrap up with the globalist control theory. Let's get to it.
Section 1. Two distinct narratives. Interpersonal versus geopolitical. We're essentially comparing two completely distinct artifacts today. On the left side, we've got the micro level. This is a highly emotional, hyper-localized WhatsApp dispute. It's raw, it's deeply personal, and it focuses entirely on interpersonal betrayal. Then, on the right side, we have the macro level, a completely detached, sweeping geopolitical monologue pulled from a Russian YouTube video. Now, while one is super intimate and the other is global, it's fascinating because both are fundamentally built on this exact same foundation of profound distrust and claims of systemic exploitation.
Moving right along to Section 2, the personal chat logs, breakdown, and Dundee.
Okay, so here we're looking at a deeply distressed exchange between two individuals going by the names Lady Decibel and Vod. Now, Lady Decibel is making some incredibly severe, completely unverified emotional allegations about the UK Dundee drum and bass scene. She talks about facing utter unjust nonsense, feeling totally destroyed, and she makes these escalating claims about being coerced and even nearly killed by men in this localized community. She's claiming this supposed betrayal has cost her everything, literally including her ability to have a family. It's a highly charged, incredibly personal narrative of victimization.
Now, what's absolutely wild about this exchange is the response. Right in the middle of Lady Decibel's frantic, desperate messages about her ruined life and her pleas for accountability, Vad makes this abrupt, totally jarring pivot. He suddenly just says, "I have an instrument which can cure cancer, but no one wants to see it." I mean, talk about a profound conversational disconnect, right? Instead of engaging with her obvious distress, he just drops in this grandiose, entirely unverified claim about possessing some world-changing AI medical device that everyone's supposedly ignoring.
Just look at the absolute breakdown in communication happening here. Lady Decibel is sending these desperate pleas, demanding that Vad and others get her back home to England ASAP. She's talking about her bloodline being gone, outlining everything she's lost. And Vad's singular, detached response to this massive outpouring of anguish, he just says, "I'm in Kiev." It perfectly encapsulates this micro-narrative of exploitation. You have intense emotional distress colliding with complete detachment. It's like they're existing in two parallel, totally non-intersecting realities.
All right, Section 3. A geopolitical video transcript, the macro view. So pivoting sharply from that intimate text exchange to the macro view, we're going to examine a Russian YouTube video transcript by Nikolai Lilin. The central question that frames his entire monologue is right here. Who owns Ukraine? And, this isn't a question about military front lines or borders. It's actually a framing device for this sweeping economic and geopolitical argument about the true ownership of a nation-state. Lilin's overarching thesis here is that the nation isn't actually fighting for its freedom or independence at all. Instead, he asserts that the country has already been systematically sold out behind the scenes. He's claiming that a 1% global elite is actively converting the entire nation into a massive corporate asset. In his view, the current conflict is really just a smokescreen to cover up this unprecedented transfer of wealth and resources.
Which brings us to Section 4, corporate land ownership allegations.
So the absolutely crucial point Lilin leans on is this number right here, 60%. He claims that 60% of the nation's arable land, its famously valuable black soil, is supposedly already owned by Western corporate entities. He specifically points the finger at massive agricultural and investment firms like Cargill, DuPont, Vanguard, and BlackRock, claiming they are the true owners of this land, having scooped it up through offshore shares and massive investments.
And when you look at how he builds this argument on a regional level, the speaker details these staggering, highly specific ownership statistics, which he directly pins on the corporation Monsanto. According to these claims, 78% of the land fund in the Sumy region, 59% in Kherson, and 56% in Chernihiv have already been completely taken over by this single corporation, essentially removing it from the nation's sovereign control forever.
Furthermore, Linson points to a 2022 conference that took place in Lugano, Switzerland. He claims that during this specific conference, Western powers proactively carved the country up into zones of economic responsibility for future exploitation, all under the guise of reconstruction. He asserts that regions were basically parceled out like prizes. Kharkiv handed to the USA, Rivne to Italy, Chernihiv to Germany, and Sumy to Canada.
And finally, Section 5, the globalist control theory, the Great Reset.
To really grasp the scale of his argument, we have to look at how the speaker defines a special purpose vehicle, or SPV. According to the transcript we analyzed, an SPV is a special investment mechanism supposedly created by the U.S. Treasury but handed directly over to the corporation BlackRock. Lillen asserts that this move essentially elevates BlackRock to act as an equal to the U.S. Treasury itself, giving them this unprecedented control over printing and distributing money, basically making them the primary cashier for global dominance.
So what is all this immense financial power allegedly being used for? Well, Lillen outlines the supposed goals of the Great Reset, which is an ideology he claims is being heavily pushed by the World Economic Forum. He lists out these extreme objectives: an unprecedented reduction of the global population, the creation of digital concentration camps, the total elimination of national states, and ultimately, the establishment of a unified, global corporate government run entirely by this elite group.
And this quote right here, brilliantly, albeit darkly, illustrates the absolute core of his narrative. To explain the devastation of the current war, Lillen leans on this really harsh metaphor. He claims the global elite view the local population merely as biotrash. He says it's exactly like a gardener clearing their plot of fallen, rotting autumn leaves. They just collect this foliage into a pile and set it on fire. He alleges the war is nothing but a deliberate mechanism to literally burn away the population, freeing up the land for its new corporate owners so they don't face any resistance.
So whether it's a desperate cry for help in a local music scene over WhatsApp or a sprawling, complex theory about globalist domination on YouTube, these narratives of exploitation always rely on deep-seated distrust. They take our anxieties and they structure them neatly into villains and victims. So I want to leave you with this thought. How do extreme narratives, from intimate text messages to sweeping geopolitical monologues, shape our very understanding of truth in the digital age? The next time you encounter an intense claim of victimization online, take a step back and ask yourself, are you looking at the raw facts, or are you looking at the architecture of a carefully constructed narrative? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep asking those hard questions, and I'll see you next time.